Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So before I posted this video, my channel was kind of like a gaming channel and movie reviews with my boyfriend, but I kind of want to move into musical reviews. And I would ask if you would like that, but like I'm gonna do it anyway because this is something I'm very much passionate about. So today we're going to be talking about Heathers. So we're going to be talking about both the movie and the musical. So this video is going to be titled, Why Heathers the Musical Bastardized the Movie. And, before you musical theater Heathers fans get your panties in a twist, I like Heathers the Musical. I really do. And I used to be a fan who liked it more than the movie. But as I grew up, I realized the movie is so much better. And I think there's two main reasons. The first is dehumanizing characters in the movie that were humanized. Dehumanizing characters in the musical that were humanized in the movie. And humanizing characters who are actually awful in the movie. So let's start with what the musical and movie alike is named after. The Heathers. So in the movie, let's start with Heather McNamara because I feel like they least bastardize Heather McNamara. In the movie, the only crime she did was she slipped the note onto Martha Dunstark's tray. Big deal. And when Kurt and Rand laughed at Martha, they kind of were just like, and like the whole school wasn't laughing. It like really wasn't that big of a deal in the movie. But then throughout the movie, she gets raped by Kurt and Ram, and Veronica just leaves to go with JD to be like safe or whatever, and JD looks over his shoulder at Heather McNamara getting raped. So, okay, one crime, one awful thing that happened to her. 2, it finds out that her parents are divorced. And while that's not like a big deal in the movie, it like part that leads to her suicide. 2, 3, Heather Chandler died, and now Heather Duke is in power, and Heather Duke wasn't really the nicest to her. But in the musical, she's more mean to Heather McNamara. And then, so yeah, that's kind of all that led to her suicide note. And one thing I want to point out is in the musical, she goes, all my rides to school are dead. Heather Chandler, Kurt, and Ram. It's clearly stated in the beginning of the musical that Heather Duke has a Jeep. So Heather McNamara knows that Duke doesn't even like her enough to give her a ride to school. Okay, let's move on to, as I said, Heather Duke. So Heather Duke. Oh, I'm not done with Heather Mac. I forgot. But in the musical, Heather Mac is awful. She is so mean to Martha. She's just so mean in general. And then in the original off-Broadway cast with Barrett Wilbert Weed and stuff like that, before they went to West End, she set up Veronica for date rape. And I don't want to hear, well, the West End version took that part out. Shh, I'm not talking about the West End version. I don't like the West End. Go away. Set her up for date rape. And then when Blue Repies happened, she kind of just like dancing, like, and then she's like, oh, I want to kill myself because Heather Duke is mean to me. Tough luck. You were mean to everyone else, and now that Chandler's dead, you don't have protection. Tough luck. Like, suck it up. Do you know how Martha is feeling? Like, in the movie when she went to kill herself, I actually felt for her. But in the musical, I was just like... And then the musical fandom was like, oh, she's a sweet cinnamon roll. No, she's not. I don't know if I explained. Okay, now Heather Duke. So Heather Duke in the movie and the musical both have bulimia. But in the musical, they kind of gloss over her bulimia. But in the movie, it's very clear that her bulimia is partially caused by Heather Chandler. And you don't just get bulimia. It's like, it's a mental illness. It's like, it's a full-on thing. I'm not gonna get into the facts about bulimia because I'm not research on it. But the movie makes it seem like her bulimia is based on the mean stuff that Heather Chandler said to her. Heather Chandler treats her like absolute garbage. But in the movie, after Heather Chandler dies, you see her purging on food and not throwing it up, showing that Heather Chandler was the main cause of why she felt like shit. So when Heather Duke became evil in the movie, I felt for her. I felt this is her regaining her power and her sense of self after her biggest bully, Heather Chandler, died. Okay, but in the musical, she sets her up for date rape. Then she was like, oh, you were sucking Curtin Ram's dick. Oh my God. And then in the West End version, I will talk about it now, she sings a whole song about it. But in the movie, she's not that mean to Veronica. She kind of goes along with the suicide note JD thing because she wants power and she trusts JD. So I really can see why she went evil in the movie. And the musical just kind of glossed over the fucking bulimia, which is a huge part of her character. They did the, bulimia is so 87 quote from the movie, and then they glossed over it. I don't like that. Let's move on to the almighty mythic bitch, my queen, my goddess, Heather Chandler. So Heather Chandler in the movie and the musical are kind of the same. She doesn't really show any weaknesses, and she's just really mean, except for one thing about the movie. In the movie, she's probably 16 or 17, she's a junior, and she's dating a college boy. I don't know which year in college. Either way, he is 18 plus. If he's 18 and she's 16 or 17, I can maybe make a case, but 18 plus. Mind you, he is an adult, she is a minor. And at the party, he forces her to give him oral sex. Not cool. Coercion doesn't equal consent, David. But in the musical, she's kind of shown as doesn't have a boyfriend. She's so powerful. But I feel like they should have kept David in. But they're dehumanizing the Heathers because the Heathers are bad. And even in the movie, after that, she drinks water and spits it at the mirror because she's disgusted with herself. That's the only humanization of Heather Chandler that we see. But it's something. And let's move on to, speaking of JD, the humanization of bad people. So, this is a trope in a lot of musicals where they turn shitty, horrible people and try to humanize them. In the movie, the only weakness of JD we see is when he talks about his mother. And he doesn't even really seem to care all that much that his mother died. I mean, he talks about her as like, I liked my mother, we got along. But he seemed like apathetic almost about it. But in the musical, they humanize him so much. They're like, he sings Our Love Is God after he gets beat up by Curtin Ram. And one thing I want to point out the most is Broadway Radical has a great video talking about this. It's called Everything That's Wrong with Heathers. You should watch it. It's good. I got some of my points from him. I meant from her. Sorry, she came out of trans. From her. I'm not sure if she still uses she, her. She hasn't really posted in years. So I should just use they. So they said that in the movie, JD sneaks into her house, but in the musical, she sneaks into his. Why? And I've heard people make a case that Dagger Walking is very rapey, and it doesn't sound like JD had the most consent. He's just like, that works for me, who? But, like, I could see that point. But what I like about the movie is they show JD is basically a psychopath. But why do they have to characterize him, like, humanize him in the musical? Like, we can have psychopathic characters. It's not against the rules in musicals. You don't have to humanize a very shitty person based on a movie. They also did this with Chris and Carrie. They gave her a line at the end of World According to Chris. It was like, boo-hoo, my friends hate me because I'm evil. That's really all they did to humanize her, so that's, like, not really a great analogy. What am I doing with my hands? I could make a whole video about Carrie, but... So they humanized JD. But I don't want JD to be humanized. He's a shit person, and you can see that if you watch the movie. Why do we have to humanize musical characters because it's a musical? If you wanted to humanize characters, humanize the Heathers more, because that's what it was like in the movie. And you said your source material was the movie, but really, your only source material from the movie is putting quotable lines from the movie into the musical. And because of this, so many teenagers, myself included, I'm not a teenager anymore, I'm turning 21 on February 10th, woo-woo, are falling in love with JD. They're like, oh my god, I love JD, and JD did nothing wrong. JD is wonderful. He killed 3 people. He coerced Veronica into killing 3 people. I don't care if they were shitty human beings. Veronica even sings in a deleted song, they still had time to grow. Now, I don't want to make an argument for Kurt and Ram. Rapists are rapists. But Heather Chandler had so much time to grow when you watch the movie. And the musical just bastardized that. Alright, let's talk about Veronica. I don't like Veronica. I like her as a character, I don't like her as a person. If you watch the movie, she leaves Heather McNamara to get raped. I know she's going to safety, but she just went with JD. They were both there, they could have stopped it. She obviously didn't know that they were going to be killing Kurt, Ram, and Heather, so I'm going to give her a pass on that. And she didn't want to go to the cops because JD could just turn her in. And then she didn't at the end because... well, she was nice to Martha at the end, and she didn't want to bully Martha. Yay, you don't want to be a shitty person. And just because you're nice to Martha at the end, and you were nice to Betty Finn that one time. I do like the part in the musical where, to save herself, she says, oh, I wrote that note. I like that. She was a shitty person for that. I like that. But Martha was giving you an out. You could have outed JD for killing them and gone to the police with that. Like, there's so many ways you could have taken down JD once you had Martha as an outlet. But no, you decided to be a shitty person. And I get the argument of, oh, well, she was in love with him. She was being manipulated by him. Yes, she was. Why couldn't we have used that for JD? I guess I could make an argument that the reason they humanized him is to show he's better to manipulate her when he seems more human-like. But in the movie, he was a complete psychopath, and she saved with him, like, close to the very end. So, musical, what are we doing? Stop humanizing shitty characters. And I don't want to call JD a psychopath because being a psychopath is an actual mental illness. It's a personality disorder. I don't want to call that. But he gave psychotic tendencies. But I'm saying psychopath because that's what Veronica called him in the film. So, yeah. That's really it. They didn't really change Kurt Ram much, except made him shitty people. I don't want them humanized at all. They're shitty people. But the problem I have is with people shipping Kurt and Ram. Why? Because Kurt and Ram were not gay. They were very openly homophobic. And they're like, but the note wasn't written by Kurt and Ram. It was written by JD and Veronica. And also, I hate Dead Gay Son. It's a good song. But in the musical, it was just a quirky, I love my dead gay son. Kurt, if you can hear me, I love my dead gay son. It was just a quick line. And then the musical made Kurt and Ram's dad gay? Why? Why was that like a plot point that's necessary? Broadway Radical says that too. There is some musical where we absolutely just don't care about the adults. Why does Miss Fleming need a song? Like, she was relatively important in the musical, but in the musical, she was exploiting the teenagers for the news. I don't need her singing a song about shining a light. Go away. Go away, Miss Fleming. Go away. And I don't need Dead Gay Son where the dads are gay. Go. That song can leave. And just a quick line. I'm going to make a whole video about this too. It's probably going to be a shorter video. But musicals really only work on stage. I've started to notice that, especially with Dear Evan Hansen, I used to listen to the soundtrack a lot. But I've started to realize that I only like the musical of Dear Evan Hansen if I see it on the stage. Like, I wouldn't listen to You Will Be Found on its own. I might listen to Requiem and Sincerely Me on its own. But I wouldn't listen to, like, If I Could Tell Her. I'm just gonna make a whole thing about Dear Evan Hansen and all that. So I'm done. That's my rant about Heather's the Musical and how much I love the movie. Please watch the movie. Winona Ryder is in it. I forgot what his name was. Christian Slater is in it. Oh, and then the people are like, Christian Slater did nothing wrong. He molested women. He sexually assaulted women. Like, stop defending Christian Slater. He is a shit person. Okay, bye. I could make a whole video about Christian Slater too. Bye-bye.